In our last episode, we discovered a mutinous plot to overthrow the captain. They said he could not be trusted, and we discovered that at least 4 people abandoned the Obra Dinn and fled out to sea in a dinghy. We deduced the names of some of them, but we don't know where they were headed. And we learned that the captain did something which caused the great beast that attacked the ship to release them, but we don't know what it is that he did. But we followed this last memory trail to its end. Now we have to explore the Obra Dinn to find more human remains so that the memento mortem can pick up a memory trail. In the last memory, we saw a man walking out of a nearby cabin. This was the first mate, and he was leaving the first mate's cabin. Back in real time, we see that the door to the first mate's cabin is now open. Heading inside, we don't see much until we look out the window. Hanging outside the window is a decayed human leg, caught up in some riggings. Taking out our memento mortem, we can find out exactly what happened to him.
On your toes.
Go back!
Here.
Captain!
Slack the lifts and lower the boats! The whole crew will be on us!
Give it up!
A bald man is shot in the heart. He has a knife in his hand, and we see a distinctive tattoo on his right forearm. He's being shot by another man who's holding a woman captive. This woman is none other than one of the members of our Formosan royalty. The man is one of our officers. This is the first time we've seen him. To his right is another man wearing a neckerchief. He was one of the executioners during the Justice at Sea sketch. And lying on the deck, crawling or wounded, is one of our midshipmen, Peter Milroy, whom we identified in our last episode. Near to him is another man clutching his head. I believe this is the first time we've seen him. And lying on the ground by the wheel, stabbed in the thigh, is our helmsman, whom we identified earlier. Heading up to the other side of the poop deck, we see a man wearing a uniform we should recognize, standing on the railing. And near to him, we find men being loaded into a boat. Chapter 3, Murder. Part 3, Outside the First Mate's Window. Our victim's face is blurry. We don't know who he is, but we do know how he died. He was shot with a gun by, for now, an unknown attacker. Taking a look at the transcript, we can try to piece together what happened here. From what we saw, it looks like some of the crew members were abducting the Formosan royalty and loading them into boats. They appeared to be doing so without the consent of the captain. The Formosans called out to the captain for help, and the sailors worried about the other crew members discovering what they were doing. Taking a look at the Life at Sea sketch, we see that there were 11 people present in this scene, but we only had time to discover a few of the faces. Heading back to the memory, we can inspect more closely. The bald man with the beard is one of the members of the Formosan royalty. He is being pulled into the boat by one of the other sailors. He is also being pushed into the boat by another sailor with a beard. Heading over to the other side of the poop deck, we can get a better look at the woman being abducted and the murder of our bald seaman. Looking to the right of this man, we see another down in the dinghy. He's hoisting it, has a bag draped around him, and has a pipe clenched in his mouth. This is an important clue that we'll come back to later. That's all 11 people, but to better understand this story, we need to go back in time one more step. So on the deck, we can activate the memento mortem to discover the next body. Oh, and we completely missed this. We find a corpse hanging from the masts. Back in real time. His body hangs from the mast. but he doesn't look like he got tangled. This looks intentional. Let's see what happened.
Oxhorn Lao, you have been found guilty by self-confession of the murder of Nunzio Pasquale.
Quiet.
As captain of this ship, and by the authority of the East India Company, and thus the Crown of England, I sentence you to death by firing line. Mr. Wolf, when you are ready.
Right, sir. Ready, men. Aim. Fire!
He was executed by firing squad. This is the very scene we've seen sketched in the Justice at Sea sketch. There is a line of 4 men with weapons pointed at the body. 3 bullets fly by, but only 1 delivers a killing blow. Following the powder trail, we see that the killing blow came from this man, whom we've already identified as Henry Brennan in our previous episode. The deck is covered with people. Practically the whole ship turned out for this. We find one of the officers, whose fate we discovered in our last episode. The captain stands by. He pronounced the sentence, and many of the other officers stand behind him. We see topmen in the riggings, but there's just no time to examine every single person in this scene. Murder Part 2 on the main deck. This scene is filled with clues. The victim's face is unblurred, and that's because they gave us his name. While he was being executed, the captain called out Oxhorn Lao, one of the Formosans, and we know his fate. He was shot with a gun, and we know who landed the killing blow. By following the trail of gunpowder, we know that it was Seaman Henry Brennan who killed him. But we have to wait for a total of 3 fates before we know if we're correct here. Taking a look at the transcript, we can try to figure out the scene. Oxhorn Lao was accused of killing Nunzio Pasquale, but one of the other Formosans said that he's innocent. So it would be premature to write down Pasqua's fate at this point. We need more evidence. But a second name was dropped here. After the woman said that he has done nothing wrong, a man addressed her by name. Miss Lim, it's too late. Therefore, we have enough information to positively identify the final woman aboard this ship. We've already identified the other 3. She must be Bun Lan Lim from Formosa, but we don't know her fate yet. It was here that I stumbled upon another tutorial segment by clicking on Memories at the bottom of the portrait. Memories where this person appears can be navigated from here. Bookmark all memories where they appear for quicker navigation. This may come in handy, but I didn't mean to bookmark her, so we'll remove that for now. Now, a third name was mentioned in this transcript, Mr. Wolf. The captain gave Mr. Wolf the command to fire. We find a man in a top hat standing next to the firing line, and he has his arm outstretched as if he just lowered it, giving the command to fire. We also recognize him as one of the victims from a previous episode. He died on the gun deck while battling the beast with cannons. At the time, we didn't know his name, but now we do. Heading back to the Justice at Sea sketch, we can find his portrait and at last identify this man. There is only one Mr. Wolf on the manifest, Christian Wolf from Austria. And sure enough, he's a gunner. Well done. 3 more fates correct. So we were right about the bosun. That's going to make it much easier to identify the bosun's mate later. Those are the major clues we can get from this scene. But there are a lot of minor clues we can get simply by observing each of the people. But those clues won't make sense until later in this series. So it's important at this time to examine each person, to see where they're sitting, and to make notes of what they're wearing. Of course, we can at any time come back to this scene in case we missed something. Since many of the members of the ship were still alive at this time and are here in this scene, we may have to revisit it many times throughout the course of this investigation. At the moment, no other faces are unblurred, so we don't have enough information to identify anybody else. Of note, however, we see the bald man in the striped shirt who was fighting the Kraken next to the bosun in a previous episode, holding back the other Formosans on deck. This gives us a clue as to his job. Taking a look at the Formosans, we see one guard remaining and another member of the royalty. These are the two who are being abducted in the last memory. Then on the other side of the ship, we see two men dressed for work. This gives us a clue as to what their jobs may be on the ship. A man with short hair wearing an apron standing next to crated animals, and another man who's not only standing next to him wielding a large fork, but also stands next to the aproned man in the Life at Sea sketch. Perhaps this means they work closely together. We see two Chinese topmen sitting in the riggings next to each other, but what's interesting is they both wear different shoes. And we notice that each of the officers in this scene is standing next to a person who all share distinctive and identical uniforms. This officer, who was our murderer in the last memory, even appears to be having a conversation with one of these men, as if they might be close. But then we notice another wrapped body lying beneath our executed Formosan. We can activate the memento mortem to find out what happened to him. Back in real time, we can place the body. Oh, that was dramatic. It didn't have to move very far, but decided to take the long route.
Hello? Who is there? Who is that? Is someone hurt? Signore Nichols, is that you? What are you doing down here?
Oh, hello, yes. All fine here. Just, sorting some things. Watch your step. Here, let me help you.
Signor Nichols stabs a man through the heart, and his portrait is unblurred, which means we have enough information to identify him. And at last we know the identity of the officer who shot our first murder victim at the beginning of this episode. Turning around, we see another man lying on the ground. It's one of the Formosan guards, none other than the man executed in the last memory, Hoksang Lao. But he can't be dead in this scene. We saw him die in the last one, which means he must be unconscious. And it appears that he was clubbed in the head. And then peering into a supply closet, we see something glimmering from an open drawer in a trunk. Is that a shell? Well, wait a minute, we've seen something sparkling like this before, but that sparkle was out at sea. Somehow, between now and then, this object was cast out to sea. Murder Part 1, on the cargo deck. This chapter is giving us all sorts of wonderful clues. It's easy to identify the murder victim here. He was named by the captain in our last memory. His body was lying beneath the man being executed for killing him, which we now know was a miscarriage of justice. And he spoke with an Italian accent, referring to his murderer as Signor Nichols, which must mean that he's from Italy. And sure enough, we find that Nunzio Pasqua was the only person aboard from Italy. And we know his fate. He was knifed, and we know by whom. Pasqua called out to him by name, Signor Nichols. Heading to the Justice at Sea sketch, we see that our murderer's portrait is now unblurred. We can identify him, and the only person on the manifest with the last name Nichols is second mate Edward Nichols. Back in the memory, we can give the scene one final inspection. There are some hammocks here, but we don't see any numbers hanging from them, so that's pretty much all the clues we can get from this scene. To leave the memory, we can head out the door. And that's the end of Chapter 3. 3 people died during this chapter. These murders took place near the Canary Islands, still pretty early during their voyage. And we'd done pretty well. Nunzio Pasqua was knifed by Edward Nichols. Huxeng Lao was shot by Henry Brennan. But then there's this final one. An unknown soul was shot with a gun by an unknown attacker. We didn't know his identity at the time, but the final memory revealed to us his identity. So now we can go ahead and mark his attacker as Edward Nichols. So, to recount what happened this episode, Edward Nichols was doing something in the cargo deck. He was first interrupted by Huxeng Lao. Nichols responded by bludgeoning him in the head, but it didn't kill him, it simply knocked him out. He was then interrupted by Nunzio Pasqua, and so Nichols stabbed him in the heart. Then he somehow framed Huxeng Lao for the murder, and as an officer, the captain believed him. And so the captain executed Huxeng Lao for murder in front of the whole crew. Shortly thereafter, while the body was still hanging from the masts, Nichols and some other crew members tried to abduct the remaining Formosan royalty. But for what reasons, we do not yet know. With that, we complete Chapter 3, and we now have to explore the ship in real time to find the next body. We'll give the gun deck and the orlop deck a thorough investigation to see if we can find more bodies in our next episode. I publish many videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss the next chapter, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.